Hello, my friend. Welcome to the study. We're going to look at a treasure today. A treasure because it is something that I found at a used bookshop. And it has a wealth of information in it that you would not find normally had you just bought this book or not been poking around, because this book was owned by a bell ringer of Wells Cathedral, and this book is the New Bells Cathedral Guide to Wells Cathedral. Wells is a very special cathedral, and this book has some notes in it from the previous owner. Notes that prove to be a treasure trove of observations and even some questions. So we're going to have a look at this very interesting book and talk about this magical cathedral in Somerset. There will be little book sounds and page turning and lots of whispered reading. Although there is so much information, we won't be able to go through everything in detail. If you do see something that was not covered entirely, you have any questions or you would like more information, please put a comment below. Let's go inside. Wells has a very unique atmosphere. As you walk through it, you can really feel the energy that went into building it. It seems to have been a very close-knit group, a very congenial group of the master and the apprentices and the boys and workers who all helped from the design to the quarrying and cutting of stones to all of the little architectural features of this cathedral. There are a myriad of animals and figures. There is a chained library, and it is one of the few cathedrals I have seen where dogs appear to be welcome. There are also some very unique and interesting architectural elements. There's the round chapter house and the curved stone staircase leading up to it, and the crisscross arch over the choir. Shall read a bit of history while we look at the outline and design, which is wonderfully lucky to have survived Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries and Catholic churches in England. Roughly in line with the front row of chairs in the cathedral nave is a modern stone with the inscription INA Rex 688 to 726. This is a replacement stone put there by Dean Armitage Robinson of a much earlier stone in honor of Ine, King of Wessex, whom tradition has named as the founder of the Church of Wells, circa 705. The tradition may be true, but records of Ine's life and actions surviving outside Wells make no mention of it. It is a purely local tradition of which there is no firm proof or disproof. What is certain is that Aldhelm, Bishop of Sherborne, founded a church here in 705, but whether under the direction and patronage of the king we do not know. By 766, Cynewulf, King of Wessex, endowed the minster beside the great spring called Vizela or Wells, with 2 hides of land for the benefit of the minster, and that the priests there may the more diligently serve only God in the church of St. Andrew the Apostle. So already the dedication of the church to the first of the apostles is made clear. The church was given cathedral status in 900. Knowledge of the Saxon church at this time is based almost entirely on the excavations undertaken east of the cloisters between 1978 and 1980, which not only confirmed but considerably added to the information gained from a previous excavation in 1894. And we hear about the excavations. Most commentators on the whole exercise of transference of the see from Wells to Bath associate it with the resolution of the Council of London in 1075. This named the transference of the sees of Sherborne to Sarum, Lichfield to Chester, and Selsey to Chichester, but did not include Wells. There's a mention in 1534 of another Council of London, and the Domesday Book. Robert of Lewes, bishop from 1136 to 1166, rebuilt the Abbey Church at Bath, and also tried to raise the status of Wells once again. This was a common occurrence with medieval abbeys and churches. The Present Cathedral, which we shall skip to, in 1179 or 1180, work started on the new cathedral at Wells. Reginald found the ideal master mason or architect for the purpose. They don't state who this architect was, and our previous owner, our bell ringer, has written a question who, so we don't know. But you can see up in under the roof, over the porch, there are lots of markings left over from this architect as he measured and scratched in stone his measurements in the building of this cathedral. At the coronation of Richard I in Westminster Abbey in 1189, Reginald, as one of the senior bishops, supported the king on his left side, while the Bishop of Durham took the right. So Reginald was indeed important. 1191, Reginald was elected Archbishop of Canterbury, but died within the month. Saverick was the next bishop, he contrived to obtain the abbacy of Glastonbury for himself, and had himself designated Bishop of Bath and Glastonbury, much to the indignation of the monks there. However, he did little harm, for he absented himself from the country most of the time. And here we see a photograph in black and white of a beautiful Limoges enamel crozier of Jocelyn, bishop from 1206 to 1242. It says there are 57 other similar examples known. Jocelyn of Wells, one of the greatest of Wells' children, became bishop in 1206. He was the son of Edward of Wells rather than Wales, who held the estate of Wellesley and a house on the corner of the Liberty, all traces of which vanished in a road-widening scheme of 1932. Jocelyn's elder brother Hugh was Archdeacon of Wells, and later became Bishop of Lincoln. Hugh and Jocelyn were both friends of King John, and acted as advisors. Unfortunately, he only too frequently failed to follow their advice. And we know what happened to poor John and his older brother, Richard Lionheart. So we have quite a bit of very detailed history, and here is an example of some of the decoration. This headstop at the west end of the north nave triforium, showing an old man wearing a mason's cap, is thought to depict the master mason Adam Locke, who died in 1229. So this cathedral was built at the height and flourishing of the Gothic style. And here we can see the two towers that appear to be unfinished, as they would have been much taller with some steeples. And there's the main gate, the magnificent west front with nearly 300 medieval statues, begun in 1230. And here we have another note from our bell ringer about statues that were added. The elaborate tomb of William of March, bishop from 1293 to 1302. Talking about the Black Death and its effect. Another bishop, Thomas Blinkton. For such a sleepy place, Wells certainly has a colourful and vibrant history before the dissolution. This is a page from an herbal dictionary compiled by William Turner, Dean of Wells, known as the father of English botany. This coffee pot belonged to Thomas Kin, bishop from 1685 to 1691. And now, after the history, which we have flown through a bit, we walk around the outside of the cathedral. Let's look at the pictures, as they really show how truly magnificent this cathedral was and is. The northeast corner of the base of the northwest tower, with its 13th century sculpture. In the center of the bottom row is the Gospel procession and the four Marys on the right. A memorial inscription carved at the time of the Black Death on a buttress of the west front. See the uncial style. And we also have a note that says see page 1936. Let's have a look. There is the lines from the inscription. Pray for the soul of John of Pitney and receive 13 days indulgence. And there is a beautiful drawing of the west front by Richard Newcourt of Somerton, and engraved by Daniel King for Dugdale's Monasticon Anglicanum. Anglicanum, 1655. Over the great west door, the inserted niche with the beautifully carved but now headless figure of Christ crowning his mother. Above left is the figure of St. Matthew. You can just see that one there. And he looks towards the series of New Testament scenes which come out that direction. On the right is clearly seen the creation of Eve from Adam's side, near the beginning of the Old Testament series that goes off that way. And of course Mary and the Christ child over the door. Look at this beautifully carved architectural relief. This one is Christ's entry into Jerusalem. Again, the heads have fallen off, but we can see the detail of the city wall of Jerusalem and the horse. And the trefoil leaves. And that is in a corner. So lots of detail gone in here. This is Noah building the Ark inside the quadrifoil Old Testament series. And the four Marys. The detail is remarkable. Unlike other large cathedrals I have seen, however, Wells definitely has a warm, welcoming atmosphere about it. And I can only think that this is because of the people that went into building this magnificent edifice. And there's the 13th century wall of the south cloister. The monastery had been dissolved under Henry VIII, but luckily the building still remained. This one is from 1985. You can tell it's very modern. And I think that name is the one that our bell ringer added to the front when he said there were more figures added. And there you can see the bells. The heaviest ring of 10 in the world. The bells are up, ready for ringing. The tenor bell is seen on the right. And there's the inside of the bell there with the hammer. And here we have an old print from 1730. And you can see the cathedral, the chapter house. The remarkable thing, or one of the remarkable things about this cathedral, is the little tiny walkways inside, just inside, where the choir boys would stand. And from one of these openings could be seen the procession for Easter and Christmas that would come through. So they would start singing and begin their song. So you could hear them as the procession came out, and they would be behind the stone facade. The way they would fix the rafters to a wall plate. Another question by our bell ringer: why write the first sentence of this paragraph? And he refers to a photo on page 58. He seems to have been very meticulous. And here we see the inside of the nave roof. And the timbers there holding up the roof. And the arch there. Under the roof, there must be many stones and weights placed on top of these arches to keep them stable, because the arch needs the downward weight to hold it. So even the roof is not heavy enough to hold these arches. So they're constantly piling large stones and sandbags. And here, along this decorated capital, is the martyrdom of King Edmund of East Anglia, carved on the east side of the entrance to the north porch. The Danes shot arrows into him from both sides. He was then beheaded, but a wolf retrieved his head from a thicket and brought it back to the king's men for burial. Some more beautifully decorated arches. Intersecting arches with these decorations on them give the impression of airiness and lightness to what is actually quite a solid structure. There's a carving there, a cannon welcoming the visitor on his entering the north door, and there we see the central tower, circa 1200. The upper part, it says, was redesigned after a spire was burned down in 1438. So one of the spires. Luckily not the whole thing. And here we have a clock. Naquid Bereat. The exterior clock face of a later edition, circa 1475. As shown by the style of armor worn by the two knights who strike the quarter hours. And there's the chain gate, built by Bishop Beckington, 1459 to 1460, that enabled the vicar's choral to cross directly from their hall to the cathedral for nighttime services without going outside. And here you can see the octagonal chapter house, built circa 1240, but after delays finally completed in 1306. These marvelous windows, the curves of these arches and architectural decorations almost remind one of Tolkien's Rivendell. Again, the timbers over the roof of the octagonal chapter house, supported on the stone vault, with tufa calcium carbonate formed in a stream in the Bolden Hills, very light and looking like pumice. This is stone buttress of the west front, and the cloister. You can see how derelict it has been since Henry VIII. Two stone shelters built against the east cloister walk, It suggested they were for the hanging of altar linen to dry after washing in the so-called dipping place. A view of the palm churchyard, the east cloister walk, with the library above, reminds me of Redwall Abbey a little bit. Do you remember Redwall Abbey and the library and the record keeper? Here, looking west along the south cloister, recently repaired and cleaned. Beautiful high ceilings and curves that stretch up above the head. It's a very warm atmosphere. A plan showing the position of 3 obvious breaks in the building of the eastward extension between 1320 and 1330. Castellated caps of the buttresses on the presbytery extension. There's our flying buttress to hold the wall from leaning outward. All of the heavy stone. And here we see the famous double-arched nave. Note how the uninterrupted series of arches in the triforium emphasizes the horizontal aspect and also carries the eye quickly forward from west to east. Isn't that amazing? We've never seen anything like that on any other Gothic cathedral. And look at these wonderfully decorated pillars. They look as if they were made of many smaller pillars. And the nave, the ceiling, with its beautifully colored and painted parts up there in the points of the arches with the stained glass. Beautiful, beautiful, and it just dwarfs the audience. As you come in, you feel not only very small but also included in the atmosphere rather than loomed over by something large and foreboding. At Wells, one feels as if one is walked into a family, a big friendly atmosphere. And here you can see the carved heads. This is a king and a bishop. This is for the organ in the triforium around 1310. And a beautiful stained glass window. The great west window. North and south lights date from 1670, having been inserted at the expense of Robert Crichton, Dean of Wells from 1660, Bishop of Bath and Wells from 1670. The centre light, also inserted at the same time, had to be renewed with continental glass in 1813. Not often that glass survives, and here we have some years written in for the break-in building. And talking about the nave capitals, and our bell ringer has catalogued all of these things with his notes in the book. And this one is called Toothache Carving. It's near the verger's office. Actually, he has has his tongue on the aching tooth. There's a lot of personal references in the carvings. It's as if the people that built it are still there today. They come alive. You can see that there. And then the alabaster carving of Ascension above the chantry. And here, the nave pulpit. Again, we can see this beautiful design. The crossing and transepts. In the wall of the easternmost bay of the south aisle of the nave, there is a change of stone. A much rougher, pock-marked pebbly stone is used instead of the much smoother dolting. There's another change in the building and quarry. Here you can see the chained library. It's over top of the east cloister and was built in 2 stages between 1425 and 1433. You can see the shelf markings and a chained library. Usually you might be able to see some of the chains there. Has books that have chains attached to them that are attached to the shelf, so you can't take the book away. You can see all the old timbers there and the old benches. Can you imagine studying in a library like this? And this would have been quite a place to study, because it would have had more books than one could have imagined at that time. And here our bell ringer is asking for evidence of a capital that has no didactic purpose, and an Aldine edition of Aristotle printed in Venice in 1495 belonged to Erasmus of Rotterdam, given to the Cathedral Library by William Turner, Dean of Wells, in 1551 to 1554. The notes in the margin were made by Erasmus himself. This is one of the wonderful books stored in the library at Wells. Mary and the Child Jesus with Joseph, carved out of sycamore by Estcourt Clack, originally as crib figures. They were considered too good to be seen only at Christmas, so they're now displayed permanently in the south transept. The Saxon font, brought from the former cathedral, south of the present building. The oak cover is later, from 1635. Some figures on the tomb of St. Calixtus Chapel, and again the beautiful crisscross in the nave, the massive Scissor Arches built circa 1338 to 1348 to support the tower when the foundations of the 2 western piers sank into the ground. Quite a clever construction, having one arch there and an inverted arch with 2 circles to hold the weight of the tower. string course below the clerestory. Up there, on the west side of the south transept, suddenly sinks as it was dragged down by the foundations of the southwest pillar, giving way under the weight of the tower. The window here, dated 1507, that's on the interior of the cathedral in the nave area. And this is of Arnold of Nijmegen. It's in the north transept clerestory, showing the beheading of St. John the Baptist. There's a knight there with a sword casually propped behind his back before his downswing. And here, a clock. The clock is something of a marvel to behold. Here we have, on the west wall, usually described as the second oldest working clock in the world. At one time when the Salisbury clock, circa 1386, was out of commission, the Wells clock was described as the oldest. Both clocks were made by the same man or men. The Wells clock has some slight improvements over the Salisbury clock, including provision for the striking of the quarter hours. It is assumed to have been made circa 1390. It was certainly here from 1392 onwards. However, when that clock stopped in 1838, the dean and chapter had a new movement made, now in the church at Burnham-on-Sea. Reminds me of where Nelson was as a boy in Burnham Thorpe. At any rate, this clock here is Jack Blandiver, the quarter-jack who strikes the bells for the quarter hours with his heels, down here, and hits the bell in front of him with one of his hammers every hour on the hour. But that isn't the best part. The best part is these jousters. I'll see if I can show you a quick little video of what happens. This is the dial of the 14th century clock, showing hours. Position of the sun, right there. Minutes, date of the lunar month, and the phase of the moon. And there's the lunar month date. The 4 nights above rotate every time the quarter hours are struck, except during services. Isn't that magnificent? I hope the sound didn't wake you from your reverie, but I had to show you the jousting nights, reminiscent of our Parzival that we read some time ago in the study. And here is a key to the great east window, showing the subjects depicted there. Look at all of these myriad things depicted in this great eastern stained glass window. An angel with a trumpet, figures rising from tombs, Old and New Testament, figures as well as kings. Here's an 1823 engraving of part of the choir showing the bishop's throne and some prebendal stalls with a gallery over the top. And here is the bishop's throne there, the Victorian stalls, and 20th century wool embroidery. You can barely see. It's not easy to see in this dark black and white photograph. And here are the misery chords. Misery chords are little shelf-like protrusions from the bottom of a seat. When the bottom of the seat goes up or folds up, then there's a little shelf so that the monks can lean on it and kind of half sit during the service. Since they had so many times at prayer, sometimes the old ones would get tired, so miséricorde is a sort of a mercy seat, and they often had designs on these little protrusions, these shelves. And here we have a listing of all of the interesting things that were carved into the misericords at Wells Cathedral. A goat, a griffin and lion fighting, a man in a hood, and drawers riding bareback, facing his horse's tail, a hawk preying on a rabbit, two crossbills in a pine tree, an ape mimicking a peddler, a double-bodied monster, a griffin with a dog's head, a monkey holding an owl, two wyverns interlocked, each biting the other's tail, a wyvern and a horse fighting, a mermaid suckling a lion, a man with a cup asking his wife for more, a cat and a mouse, some more monsters and a griffin eating a lamb, a puppy biting a cat playing the fiddle, a man stabbing the head of a dragon, a fox preaching to 4 geese and 1 sheep, a dragon apparently asleep with its wings expanded, a fox and a goose, head of a man with ass's ears. It reminds you of Shakespeare, doesn't it? Midsummer Night's Dream. 2 monsters with male and female heads caressing. A man supporting the seat with hand and foot. A lion with ass's ears. Bird scratching its head. A dragon with a hairy belly biting its back. 2 ducks conversing, fighting dragons. A hairy man with lion's legs. It makes you think there were some local legends or local myths and stories that had circulated, certainly that hadn't been written down, that come to us bits and pieces through literature. And we've got more. We've got a tumbler who's about to turn a somersault. The head and shoulder of a female angel. 2 birds about to drink from a ewer, which stands in a basin. A monkey holding a squirrel with a collar and lead. A wood pigeon, a man riding and whipping a lion. A cat passing a pig. An eagle. A rabbit, a 2-legged beast looking at its tail which sprouts foliage. A man left-handed killing a dragon or wyvern. And I think there is a note about this from our bell ringer. It has been noted somewhere that all dragon killers in Somerset are left-handed. So we've got Somerset left-handed dragon slayers, a boy pulling a thorn from his foot, a pelican, Alexander the Great, being carried up to heaven by 2 griffins, tempted by a piece of meat, and a crouching figure that's now in the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Now you can go through this cathedral and see all of these wonderful carvings, some on the misericords and many on the pillars. So you can almost feel the congenial atmosphere of the master mason, the architect, the patrons, and all of those young men and women working under him. And here we have a plan of the Lady Chapel, showing the basis of design there. Look at that. Everything very mathematical. And here, the Lady Chapel vault. This beautifully painted, colorful vaulted ceiling circa 1320. The painted decoration was devised and executed at his own expense by Thomas Willent, a Victorian restoration. Whatever we say about the Victorians, they certainly did their homework and were very invested and passionate about the history around them. And here we have the north choir aisle and another boss on the vaulted ceiling of the passage to the undercroft or sacristy, showing 2 human heads being nuzzled by beasts. It's a man and a woman, and some beasts nuzzling them, and some trefoil leaves. And they're both smiling. Everything's very congenial in this cathedral. It's really a special place. And here, look at that marvel of engineering. The stairs going up, and these continue straight on, but the ones over here curve up to the right into the chapter house. The steps leading to the chapter house and straight on to the chain bridge and Vicar's Hall. This part of the building was begun circa 1240, but mainly built from 1286, and the upper flight up here from 1459. And here are some seats on the left for witnesses awaiting their summons to the chapter house. Let's see what the beautiful round chapter house looks like. There are the stairs coming up. So we've come up and we're turning to the right into this octagonal space with this enormous, beautifully decorated vaulted ceiling. Let's see if I can show you a picture of the chapter house. And here, the wells, the actual well, which gave the cathedral and the city their name, are on the bishop's private garden which is open to the public on Sunday and Thursday afternoons in summer. And you can see the end of the beautiful cathedral there, and the huge, heavy tower that created so many architectural problems. And here are some of the gates, the penniless porch where beggars sat for alms, the Bishop's Eye gatehouse from the marketplace to the palace, and the north side of the old deanery, showing the rooms occupied by Henry VII on one of his visits. You might remember Henry VII from Shakespeare's play Richard III and the Battle of Bosworth. This is the Vicar's Hall, completed in 1348, the dining hall of the vicars. Very pleasant room used for small concerts and recitals today. And here is the checker, circa 1420, where the receiver of the vicar's choral took the rents for properties belonging to the vicar's choral, which were supposed to cover their expenses and the maintenance of their buildings, and the medieval filing cabinet, used mainly to hold the deeds of vicars' properties. Each drawer has a slightly different shape so that no drawer can be replaced in a wrong position. And here are some 15th century cupboards to hold vestments and mass vessels. Another view of the cathedral and its giant tower from the Vicar's Close. The windows of number 14, which face down to the Vicar's Close. The shields, the family crests. Look at these lovely rounded pieces of stained glass. There's certainly an airiness and elegance to the design of this cathedral. And then we have a list of the bishops of Bath, Wells, Glastonbury, and all of the statistics, the dimensions, the money table. I hope, my friend, you've enjoyed this little jaunt through Wells Cathedral via this little book picked up in the used bookshop. If you ever visit Somerset, Wells is very worth your time and visit. It is an utterly magical place to visit in person or in your imagination. Be good to yourself, be kind to others, and until next time, be extraordinary.